I'm Carla, and I wanted to share with you the simple daily routine that has been working really well in this time of life for my family. We are just finishing up our second week of self-isolating during this COVID-19 crisis, and I think now more than ever, it has been really important to have just a simple, predictable routine for the kids and myself. So while we are homeschoolers, being home all the time certainly is not the norm for us. We've got classes and activities and sports and all that kind of thing. And so a couple days into being home all the time, I realized we needed to change things up. And I think routines are really important because number one, it eliminates some of the decision fatigue that we as moms get. You know, when they're constantly, Mom, can I play on my iPad? Mom, can I, do a craft? Can we bake something? All those questions get, for me, really overwhelming. And so I knew that we needed to revamp our typical routine to take into account that we were home every day. So I spent a little time, and I think the first thing to think about is that I'm calling this a routine because it is different than a schedule. A schedule typically goes by a clock, and it's easy to get behind on a schedule. And you feel if you've missed one thing, then you're just hooped for the rest of the day. And so I'd like to think of this as a routine because while I do have times for our meals, I think that's important that we keep those fairly consistent. The rest of the things are somewhat flexible because every day is different. And also, if we miss something in the routine, I don't necessarily feel like we're behind. We just kind of reset and pick up after lunch or whatever the next thing is. And I don't feel like, I have to do this first thing before we can move on to the next thing. So I think that is really helpful because the problem with schedules is something comes up and before you know it, you're behind. So that's why I think the mindset of a routine is easier to work with in the reality of being home with your kids all day. All right, let's go ahead and just jump right into it here. And of course, every home and family is a different makeup of kids and parents, but this is what's worked really well for us. And then you can easily tweak it to suit what works for your kids' ages and abilities and home. So just starting off, I will just give you a peek, and this will be in the comments. I went ahead and typed it up. And so we kind of start off, I am an early riser regardless, and if I'm under stress, I am up at least by 5. So I have been up super early every single day, and I just take a little time to drink lots of coffee, do something for myself, and then also just to plan our day. So I have lists for my kids for their academic things that they need to accomplish. So one of the first things that I do when I'm getting going is I update those so that when they wake up, they already know what I'm expecting of them in that area, in the school area for the day. So that works really well, and I will share those in another video. So I wake up, and then I also have cystic fibrosis, so I have about an hour and a bit of breathing and chest therapy that I have to do, but I can do that at my desk, and that works really well because I'm working at my desk. All the things I need for that are there. And then when my son wakes up, we go ahead and after he's had a couple minutes of wake up time, we jump right into the work that he needs me for, that he can't do independently. I think if you have any early risers in your house, that it is great to take just a little bit of that time in the morning before breakfast and, either connect with them one-on-one or help them get started on their day. So my son is in 4th grade, so we do, a little bit of phonics, language, arts type things, writing, because he needs a little bit more instruction with those. And then we also review his list for the day. I get his books in a pile. I keep everything at my desk so that when I'm doing my breathing therapy, it's all right there. And then I get it all ready for him, make sure he doesn't have any questions. And then he takes that to his room when we're done our teaching time. And about that point, the girls are starting to wake up and stumble out of bed. And then we go ahead and go and have breakfast together. So I have a almost 13-year-old, and she needs a little encouraging to get out of bed, but we go ahead, and our goal is to have breakfast around 8:30. So that's kind of our first time benchmark in the day. And so we eat, have a quick breakfast, clean up from that, and then right after breakfast is when I work with my 12 and a half year old. So sometimes she has instruction, but for the most part, really, I am just reviewing her list with her, giving her instructions on her assignments, answering any questions. And I find that's really productive because then she can jump into work and get started, and she's not waiting on me to explain something. And so that has been really valuable, and it is the best use of both of our times. And so then she can get started on her day, and she likes to work as independently as possible. My third and last child has just turned 7. She's in first grade. And so once I've got my oldest daughter rolling and my son is generally working on something independently after breakfast that I'd already gone over with him, that is when I spend some time with her. So we do, and her instruction time at first grade is pretty short. We do some sight words, some phonics. She reads to me, and we do a little bit of writing, math, something, very concise. And then I have what I call our mini morning time, where I read to her, and we'll do something, like a little game or something like that. And then for the most part, that's the bulk of her academics for the day. And we can move through that pretty quickly. She enjoys it. And then for the rest of the morning, the kids are, because they have a list of what I'm expecting them to do school-wise, then they are pretty good about balancing what they need to do. I'll say, oh, hey, have you done this? And they'll show me their lists and kind of check in throughout the morning. And, but then they are pretty good about either working or taking a break, and it works really well, and it's very efficient. And then, it's not as smooth as it sounds, because there's always someone who has a question or needs help. But then I'm just, as I'm doing whatever, lunch prep or anything like that, I make myself available to them, and they kind of work and play independently. And our goal is to be done our academic lists by lunchtime. That typically doesn't happen during our regular homeschooling because we have so many days we're out of the house, but since we're home every day, it works really well. And we can do something 5 days a week easily. Then it works really well to spread it out and be done our academics by lunchtime, except for my oldest. Typically in the afternoon she does her piano practice, and she's been doing Duolingo, but those are really fun for her, so she doesn't mind doing them. And then right around noon is when we have lunch together, and once again clean up and move on to our afternoon stuff. So by the time that we've got lunch cleaned up, it's normally about 1 o'clock or so. We always listen to audiobooks as we eat breakfast and lunch, and so that's kind of enjoyable. I've been putting puzzles out, and they can work on that as people are finishing up eating, and so it's been kind of a nice peaceful part of our day. And then as soon as we're done with lunch cleanup, my 7-year-old goes on to the computer, and she has a couple, she does math seeds and red apple reading, so she can work completely independently through those lessons. It doesn't take her very long. And then I do what we call it used to be our morning time, but now that we do it in the afternoon, we call it our reading basket, where I cover some subjects with the 2 oldest. So we do, history, geography, memory work, some of those things. And we just do a short little, 20-minute session there and cover some of our together subjects. And then that leaves a lot of the afternoon for things like after our reading basket time. I like to have, either we do some kind of a project together, or we'll play a board game or something like that. Because I'm a morning person, I know that I'm going to be running out of steam and patience. So, that's my last little push of something we do, that's fun. And then after our project, fun, board game, that kind of stuff, which varies from day to day what we do. Maybe we make cookies, anything along those lines, something that's fun, then it is outside time. And it depends on the day. Lots of days we have been going for hikes together as a family. My husband's been home. But if I am feeling like I need a break, then I am thankful that we have a backyard that they can go play in, and they can just go and play by themselves. So either way, those are the things that need to happen before 4 o'clock rolls around. And that is when they have their screen time. And by having a hard time when they know they're allowed to have their electronic time has worked so well, because it was, it can constantly be asking for it, and they just know, nope, they need to have these things done. If they're not done, they don't get to have their screen time, and they had to have their outside and exercise time. And then at 4 o'clock, they know that they can go, and for the most part, they like to game with their friends, and it's kind of the closest thing that we're going to get to a social outlet at this time. So 4 o'clock, they do that. Sometimes I have them help me prep supper before 4 o'clock when my husband is away at work. So depending on whether he's home and helping or if he's gone, then how much they do to help out there. And then I aim to have supper around 5:30, 6 o'clock. And then there are no electronics after supper, so they can, play quietly, independently. And then I kind of do a little short reading time. I call it our evening reading basket. And I have some things that are books that I read to all three of them. So we're currently enjoying the Grandma's Attic series, and we have a little devotion and a poem of the day that we read then. So it's short and sweet. I don't have to think about it, and it works really well for us before bed. Some benefits of having a routine, like I mentioned before, is it eliminates some of the decision fatigue for mom. And I think during anytime it's beneficial, but especially of times of stress, that it is really important for kids to know what comes next. They're not blindsided that, wait a minute, I thought, we had all of our work done and now you want to do social studies after lunch. They just know, oh, that's what's coming next. And there's flexibility. I mean, sometimes it doesn't always go exactly like that, but for the most part, we do stick to it. And it was interesting when I first presented it to the kids. My couple of them weren't really sure. They thought it would, they had some different ideas that I wasn't loving as much. And so I got a little bit of pushback on it. But now that we've been doing it for, almost 2 weeks, I noticed that my older two, they said, Mom, at first we weren't sure about this, but we really think it's good. We've talked to a few of our friends, and they're allowed to have, screens, Fortnite, whatever they want, whenever they want, and they don't really have a routine, and they are so bored, Mom. They say that these 2 weeks have just been dragging by for them, and they said for them, for the most part, their days go by pretty quickly, and I was so happy to hear that, because that was the goal. I don't want them to feel like we're trapped at home and their days are dragging by. I want them to feel like we're busy and productive and have things to accomplish and have fun things together and outside time. And I think with the routine that we've put together, all those things happen, and it just makes all of us feel good. And it just is, keeping us busy, and that is good for all of our mental well-being. So I hope this works for you. I hope that you can adapt it to the ages of your kids. Just remember, there's no right or wrong way. This is what works for the ages of my kids in grades, 1, 4, and middle school. And it was very different when I had littles. But for now, it works. And so I hope that you can be inspired and put together a predictable routine that will work for your family, either anytime when you're homeschooling, or especially during this crazy self-isolating time during the COVID pandemic. So just best wishes to you, and my hope is that you can make this a special time for you and your family. Bye-bye.